Just how big a blow is this latest development for the al-Assad government with these opposition forces capturing Hama?
It's a major blow and a major scare for Assad government because it seems that the rebels have the upper hand and momentum. They have been able to capture Aleppo and then push south onto Hama. And now they have the momentum. They'll probably most likely push further south into Homs, and their target would be to capture the capital, Damascus, and bring an end to the Assad government.
And how likely is that? I mean, next steps, as you just mentioned there, you know, it's the road leading to Damascus here. How likely is that in your estimations with what you've seen over the last week?
Well, there was an expectation that the Assad government forces would be able to stop the rebels in Hama, but they weren't able to. What appears to be happening is that the HTS, which is the largest force in this coalition of rebels, they're really well organized. They've used the last four years of ceasefire to transform themselves, the army and the organization, into a regular army rather than a horde of rebels. And it seems that their success is largely or partly to that. And also there's an element of surprise that they made a surprise attack and caught Assad forces off guard. But one would expect that the Assad forces are regrouping and making plans. So the next city, we could expect a stronger resistance, but we don't know if that will be enough.
You mentioned that it's a coalition of rebels here. Who is pulling the strings of that coalition?
The Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, is the main element within that. And they have surprisingly shown their attitudes have changed as well. It looks like they also have very good diplomacy, that they're able to keep a coalition of forces together. And we saw that with a very quick negotiation with the Kurdish forces, where Kurds did not contest the capture of Aleppo. They withdrew. That was negotiated very quickly and successfully on their part. So it seems that they are very good at diplomacy as well.
What has the Syrian army's response been? We know that, as you just mentioned, they have retreated. I think I read in a statement somewhere it was saying the army was saying it's redeploying its forces.
It certainly must be planning, but the key aspect to the morale of Assad forces and government is the support that they expect from Russia and Iran. And Russia, as we know, is in a quagmire with the Ukraine war. Iran has its own problems. So we're not sure that the support that they've been getting from these two countries have weakened considerably over the last year or so. And particularly, Iran's been under a lot of pressure in terms of the Gaza conflict and the Lebanon conflict. And there's claims that they are supporting these groups. And so the Assad government has been on its own, largely.
Which was going to lead me to my next question. We know that prior to this recent insurgency that Russia and Iran had backed the Assad government and its forces. What do you think their reaction is going to be?
Well, they have indicated that their support is continuing. Well, that's a bit of a rhetoric, but what actually happens on the ground, we're not sure. Putin has to make a decision. He's in a dilemma at the moment. Does he concentrate all his forces in Ukraine, which he's not winning that war? For him to win, he has to focus on it. On the other hand, if he does not support Assad government and it collapses, it loses a very important ally in the region and access to Mediterranean. So Putin is in a really difficult situation at the moment, and we don't know what he will do.
And what are your estimations of how this will all play out with an incoming Trump administration?
Well, Biden is very weak politically at the moment, and I don't think there's a caretaker period. I don't think Trump cares who controls Syrian cities. Whether even if the government collapses, his policies when he was in his first term was distancing himself and the U.S. government from Syrian conflict. I think that will continue. Probably he'll hope that by the time he takes office, things are sorted out on the ground and there's some sort of a balance, or even the Assad government could collapse by then.
Given you recently wrote about the world being distracted in other areas of the world, as we've outlined here, the Middle East, Ukraine, caretaking mode in the United States, given that the world is somewhat distracted with that, is the insurgency that we're seeing currently enough to bring the eyes back onto Syria, or what do you expect over the ensuing weeks and months?
Well, the world has changed as well. They were distracted, but they've changed. If these rebels, we don't know what they are negotiating behind the scenes with major regional or geopolitical powers. They could be putting some bargaining chips in there. And if the geopolitical players like that, they may actually allow the rebels to take control of Syria. I'm personally expecting either Syria to be split into three or Assad government collapsing. And that collapse will help Israel because the Iranian support will be cut. There could be a pipeline, a gas and oil pipeline through Syria and Turkey into Europe to cut across the European dependency on Russian gas. That's certainly in European interest. So they would want stability in Syria. And if it means that the rebels take over and stabilize Syria, that might be accepted by the international community.
Finally, Mehmet, this is the politics playing out of this insurgency, but what is life like for those innocent civilians living throughout this in Syria?
Well, it's been terrible, but I guess the quick change of power, these military takeovers, the fact that they're quick and it doesn't involve major battles is for the benefit of the civilians because they don't have to just be displaced or killed. So that's the only positive that's coming out of these quick takeovers. And it seems that there's some indication on the ground that they are used to this change of powers and probably they expect other changes. So it seems that their life is continuing on the ground. There's no major disruptions. But the damage has already been done to Syria. Millions of people have been displaced and have been left the country already. And the people who live there have got used to the civil war.